So back in 2009, I used to be making not so great art, but I was making sort of arty stuff in Photoshop with graphics tablet thing. And during that process of doing lots of bad concept art, I made a series of brush packs and forgot about them for 13 years. But from about 2020, I started getting notifications from people downloading and using my old brush packs. So I thought I'd finally make a video on brush packs. Mainly to say thanks to the dude on YouTube who is called the Wacky Artist. Now he's the one who was kind enough to actually link my my brushes and stuff. So thanks to the Wacky Artist for sharing my my stuff. It's nice to be suddenly getting some feedback again. It's interesting getting notifications from things from 13 years ago. Blimey. Yeah. I'll put a link in the description so you can go check out this guy's channel. I don't think he's done something for a while, sadly, but who knows, he might sort of start back up again. In honour of the Wacky Artist and the sudden spotlight again on those old brushbacks, what I'll do is I'll just quickly cover how I made those brushbacks back in the day, what's changed in the last 10 years or so since I made them, because some things have improved with Photoshop, some things have stayed the same. And for those that don't want to make their own and just want to go ahead and download stuff, I'll just quickly cover how you import those .abr files to use ready-made brushbacks like the ones I've saved on DeviantArt, because I think that did confound a few people, and it's not that obvious, I guess, but yeah. So the way brushes work, you can start with a shape. So if I just make, I don't know, like a circle. If I make a selection and go edit, define brush preset, what that will do is it will take that sort of contrast, the black and the white, just the same way as the quick mask works or the alpha channel. It's that same contrast where in this case white is completely transparent and then the black is solid or opaque. So just give this a name, like so. And in here, I have a whole bunch of options. So if I just go, first of all, with the brush tip shape. Right now, if I start drawing with this, you can see, well, I'm drawing with a mouse, but you can see it's just a straightforward line. I can change the shape by grabbing these little things here, these little anchors, and then I can draw like almost like a calligraphy pen, yeah? And you can change things like the spacing, like so. If you are drawing with a mouse, then it is good to have some kind of organic sort of feel to it. So what you can do with these options here is you can change to fade. And what this does is over time, with your stroke, it will start big and then go smaller. So I'll just show you this. Yeah, like so, and you can change how many steps it does that for. So the bigger the number in here, that stroke will last longer, but will eventually trail off. And if I just change this back to a regular shape again and change the spacing and change those. Now if I draw, again you can see you get this trailing effect. Now, if you want to do something a bit more interesting than just a round shape, what I can do is do something like this, where if I draw some kind of random shapes like so, this will make sense in a minute. So we've got my sort of random shape here. I'll go ahead and define a new brush preset like so. That does not look pretty at all. People do make brushes like this where they'll just click on it and use it like a stamp almost, but where's the fun in that? So if we go back to the options, we go back to this brush tip shape thing, we can change the spacing, so it's spread apart a bit, and what we can do is just change down the size. And now where it gets interesting, if we start using the shape dynamics, we can do a size jitter, we can change the diameter, and we can jitter the angle. So what this does is adds a random angle to each brush part. So now when I draw, you can see they're rotated randomly. So there's no longer that uniformness to the line. But let's not stop there. If we carry on, we can change things like the X and Y. And then again, that adds more randomness. So not only are you rotating it, but you're flipping it like a mirror. And then what we can do is scattering. As you can see here, this is how far apart or how far off the line you're drawing they'll be placed. And you can add more or less to that. So as your brush is moving along, it's going and adding things a bit like sort of randomly sort of throwing out shapes as you're going along that line. So if I draw now, you can see I've got a much thicker line. If I just make these really wide, you'll be able to see. You can see, yeah? It's a bit like a shotgun. They fire out. I mean, again, for giving things texture and stuff, it's pretty cool. And let's go and move that down a bit though, because I'm just going to keep it tidy and tight. So I've got my sort of scratchy looking brush here. And now what I can do is add texture to it. So if I go in here, I can just pick out some basic textures from Photoshop. So what I might do is pick something uniform like this one. And what this does, just to increase the contrast, it applies the pattern to the brush stroke you're placing. And what you can do is scale that down like so. So it gives almost like a Liechtenstein style sort of mesh filter screen dot matrix thing here, like so. Unfortunately, this doesn't jitter or scale. So right now, you can't change the scale of the texture per head, which would be really useful. Maybe they'll introduce that in the upcoming versions, but I don't think I'll use that for this one. So onto the dual brush. So that is what it says. So where I've got my brush now, what I can do is apply another brush, just like applying a quick mask over the top. And if I change the size of that, you can see now I've got quite a rough line, and I've still got the shape sort of coming outside of it, but it's less pronounced. If I keep scaling that in or out, you see like so, I've got like a nice clean line there, but it adds sort of random splatters and things to the outside. So that's always good, again, for if you're not looking for precision in your lines and you don't want complete uniformity, that can be quite good. So change this down a bit more. Let's just try it now. Let's see. Yep, quite nice. So again, this is you can tweak these things around. You can scatter again the additional brush. So the mask brush can be scattered. So again, it adds a layer of extra texture. So this could be really good for. So what I'm doing here could be really good for doing grimy edges or something. Like so. And then we can change the spacing as well. These all add a bit more randomness, so it doesn't look like you're just painting with a shape. I never really bothered with colour dynamics. Yeah, I don't really bother with that. Transfer, though, is useful. With transfer, again, I've not done anything with the pen yet. This is purely with the mouse, so don't ever think you're missing out because you haven't got a graphics tablet or a little stylus thing like this. I mean, they're getting cheaper than they were, but if you are limited on budget, you don't necessarily need one. You can do some pretty cool stuff with just the mouse and brush control, using things like fade. So again, if you add this opacity fade and change it to something like 120 steps, you can see that slowly trails off. I can change that. I might just change this back to a bit closer. Bear in mind though, transfer, when you're playing around the transfer, it can affect the dual brush thing. So you can see as it fades out, you get more of the secondary brush than you do the first one. If I turn that off, you'll see what I mean. Can you see now I've got like a nice solid line? The fade doesn't affect the sort of the dual layered mask. It affects, I think, only the primary brush, and then the dual brush isn't affected so much. The flow though, I think if I add a fade to that, let's just see. Yeah, slightly better if you're just doing the fade. I mean, if I'm doing textured stuff, typically I'd mess around with the opacity and stuff up here anyway. So, brush pose. Now this is a new one. This wasn't available in 2009 to these kind of brushes where you're making them from a shape, so that doesn't really affect anything. Wet edges. Again, this is kind of cool, I guess. I mean, if you're doing, I don't know when you'd use this, but it gives it a slight transparency to the brush, and then it keeps that same texture. So unlike the opacity or the fade with the transfer, it kind of, you get to keep your texture intact, but the edges are slightly more opaque than the sensor. Build up is a new option that wasn't in the original Photoshop I was using for the brush packs, and I'm not really sure how it works. Oh, I see. Okay, I do know how it works now. Okay, so if you just sit there with the brush and the left mouse button held down, it will just keep adding more, a bit like a spray can, I suppose. So that's quite cool, I guess. Yep. Interesting. All right. That's a new one. Yeah, that's quite good. So yeah, add that if you do want something to behave more like a spray can, I guess. So it just adds more stuff randomly on top. So I think if you turn that off, if I draw now, that's it. It doesn't continue to add stuff. If I just click and hold, nothing happens. But if I click build up and click and hold, it'll keep adding more stuff. Smoothing, that just adds more interpolation to your stroke. So again, if you're on a mouse and you want more smooth lines, smoothing kind of helps with that. So if I just do with the mouse. But use with caution. I think smoothing can tend to make things a bit laggy if you're on an older machine. I don't know what Protect Texture does, and I don't think I've ever used that or ever will. So that's kind of a brief rundown of how everything works. Yeah, so if I finish my brush now, I'll do this little icon here saying create new brush. So that's my one I've just created and I haven't saved yet. So like this. I would include the brush size as well. So there you go, that's my brush preset. I'll delete that old one. Okay, so exporting is pretty straightforward. If I just create another variation on this brush, just so you can see, if you want to export your brushes to a pack, select your brushes, go export selected brushes and just give this a name like so. Now I can delete these. To import the brushes back in, fairly straightforward. Go to this little burger menu up the top right. So this burger menu right here. Then it says import brushes. Go import brushes and then select the .abr file that you just saved to. And what that will do, it will create a new folder with the name of that ABR file, and that will have your exported brushes in there, like so. So that's a good way of making and sharing brushes. Something worth noting, back in 2009, when you exported a brush and it had a texture or a pattern on it, like this for example, unless you exported the texture pack with it, you wouldn't see it. To my brush set here, you can see I had to export out a .pat pattern set to then import here, which is no longer necessary. But if you did want to, it's the same thing for importing patterns. You pick the pattern set, and then that loads in as a folder with all the packaged patterns. So where you may have had a brush that was using a pattern to create a certain texture, those will be referenced. But make sure these are imported first. And same with your brushes. Sorry, if you're importing a brush set, so if I get one of the old brush sets, so then we'll pick, what was I think it was Grime-tastic was the first brush set I made. And then hopefully, where I have had textures on here, let's just do, oops. Yeah, that's working. Very cool. All right. Pretty much it. So you can see that pattern there. This is again the texture overlay. That gives it a nice grimy finish. Pretty cool. Alright. So I probably will do a part 2 on this, just because I've had quite a lot of fun messing around making the thumbnail for this video. So this is using just all the various different brush sets I made over the years. So I made some like hair brushes, some sort of pixely brushes. Yeah, some of these are pretty cool. I like this one. That's really cool. I'm tempted to just draw some stuff to then mess around with these. So I should use the pen. It's probably better. So yeah, so this is where if you can get a graphics tablet, it does come into its own when you have the control over pressure and stuff. So these were just for kind of adding texture to things. So if you've got some line art and you want to colour things in but add some kind of detail, and you haven't got hours to spend cross-hatching, Tube has that kind of time, these kind of basically replicate that effect, or as a rough an approximation as I can do. So a combination of all of these. So again, you can set the direction of the lines based on the brush strokes. So when you draw, that shape follows. Then you can do stuff like, yeah, that's right. So this will go, if you're drawing left to right, these grass sort of clumps will go on the top. If you draw right to left, they'll go on the bottom. So then you can use that to add highlights or whatever. Yeah, so been spending probably too much time messing around with these, just adding stuff to then make the thumbnail for the video, which you probably won't see anyway, but yeah, kind of fun to mess around with. So these are just kind of examples from those packs of what you can do messing around with brushes. So yeah, well, that's that. If you learned anything from this, do let me know. I'm always interested in reading feedback. And yeah, until next time.